Hello and welcome to Crossing the 49th, the Cross-Border Tax and Financial Planning Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Hogan from Beacon Hill Wealth Management, and today we're going to talk about the October 15th deadline for expats. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the October 15th deadline for expats, so specifically Americans living in Canada. We're already well into September now, and the last official tax deadline for U.S. tax returns is coming up on October 15th. And we'll talk about later potentially having an extension to that October 15th deadline, which I never recommend. But technically, the final U.S. tax deadline of October 15th is approaching. So this will be for everybody that has yet to file their U.S. returns. And then I'm assuming also that you have filed your Canadian return, because if you haven't filed your Canadian return, at the very latest, that would have been due June 15th for those that are self-employed. So assuming you have filed your Canadian return, the only thing left to file will be your U.S. tax return and potentially your FBAR. So just to recap the filing deadlines for Americans living in Canada, we have April 30th deadline for Canadian returns, which is the more common tax deadline for Canadians. For those that are self-employed, you have a June 15th deadline, and that lines up with the deadline for Americans living abroad. So if you're American living in Canada, you have an automatic extension to June 15th. So in a lot of cases, clients will file by June 15th, both the Canadian and the U.S. return. If you are not able to file your return by June 15th, then you will file U.S. extension to extend that return to October 15th. So that's where most people are right now who haven't filed their U.S. return. They have extended to October 15th, which means you've extended the tax filing deadline and potentially the payment deadline to October 15th. In most cases, you want to make that payment by June 15th. So that's where most of you are. And I would say in cases where you only have Canadian source income, there won't necessarily be an issue with your Canadian return in terms of foreign tax credits. So the reason we tend to like to do the U.S. and Canadian returns together is we'll have foreign tax credits that might go back and forth between both returns. But if you only have Canadian source income, most likely all the foreign tax credits and calculations you need to do will be on the U.S. return. So in cases where you do have U.S. source income and you've already filed your Canadian return, you might be in a position to have to adjust your Canadian return once you know what your U.S. tax liability is. So that's really important. That's one of the reasons why you want to file the returns together. But if you do have U.S. source income, likely not a good idea to file your Canadian return first and then wait for your U.S. return. But in this case, I'm going to assume that your Canadian return only includes Canadian source income and your U.S. return only includes Canadian source income. Therefore, when you file your U.S. 1040, you won't have to adjust your Canadian return. So this is where we're at. You have filed your Canadian return. You've likely received your assessment. And now you're going to file your U.S. tax return. You likely haven't filed your FBAR either. Most people will file those together. I'm a big fan of just getting the FBAR out of the way early in the year. You know, tax season, especially expat tax season, can be really hectic. You have, your U.S. return, you have your Canadian return, you have your FBARs, you have your T1135s. So any files or any forms you can get out of the way, prepared and filed early, the better. It's pretty difficult actually to find these forms that you can file early because you're waiting for slips to come in. The returns, like the Canadian tax return and the U.S. tax return, are quite complex. The T1135 needs to get filed with the Canadian return. But the FBAR, especially, when you only really need the highest balance in your accounts for the year, and you get your December statements in early January, I'm a big fan of filing those FBARs as early as possible. Get them out of the way in February. Don't have to worry about them. The idea of extending those all the way to October doesn't make sense. You run the risk of actually missing the returns or missing the filing, which could be a massive mistake. So file your FBARs early if you haven't. And if they're still due, then you have until October 15th. Do not wait until the last minute. Just note also, I keep saying October 15th or June 15th. If April 30th, June 15th, October 15th fall on a holiday, then you'll receive an extension to the next following business day. So if the 15th lands on a Friday, then the returns will be due on the Monday. So October 15th, as you're coming up to that date, if you're filing returns on your own and you have everything, just get it done. Don't wait. It's very easy to procrastinate with these things. If you're having your accountant help with the return, him or her have, likely a lot of returns to do by October 15th. So I wouldn't say you want to harass them about the filings, but if they have had your information for some time, so let's say you got all your information in June and the returns are not done, there's nothing wrong with sending a quick email just asking when they think the returns will be ready. The idea that you got your information in June, you still haven't received your final tax return until October can be quite stressful. So I would just ask for an update, and you should be able to get an update on when those returns will be filed. So in the unlikely event that you do not get your returns filed by October 15th, and the reason the October 15th deadline is so important, I mean, you want to pay taxes, you want to make sure you don't have penalties on taxes owing, and those can be high. The biggest issue is likely the late filing of certain forms in the 1040. Like for instance, Form 5471, if that's not filed on time, that's a $10,000 penalty per year. So ridiculous penalty. I know we don't make up the rules. That's why it's important just to file these returns as quickly as possible. Don't get close to deadlines, because if you miss the extension or the deadline, they will assess those penalties. So October 15th, get them in early. Now, in the unlikely event that you do not file your tax returns by October 15th, which I suggest you file your returns by October 15th or June 15th or April 30th, whenever possible, there is an additional option. So the IRS allows for individuals who have not filed or do not think they will be able to file their tax return on time. Now, you have to have a good reason, and the reason might be you're still awaiting certain tax slips. So, it's possible that you're waiting for some US K-1s that have not come in yet. It's not likely that you are waiting for Canadian tax forms, but there might be some information that you're waiting for. So you can write to the IRS, and I'll leave a link to this below on how to do this. You can write to the IRS requesting an extension to December 15th to file your US tax returns if you have a good reason to do so. Now, if you do want to extend your return from October 15th to December 15th, once again, I'm going to reiterate this again, I sound like a broken record. If you are going to do that, just file it as quickly as possible. Don't think, oh, now I have till December 15th, now I have some time, because we all know what's going to happen. You're going to get into December, holiday season's going to come up, everything's going to get hectic, and then you're going to rush all the way to December 15th to file the return. So you had an opportunity to file your returns likely in April of the year, and now you're all the way to December and you still haven't filed. And that's just, it's just a human condition of procrastination. We all do it, very unnecessary. I would never suggest you go all the way to December 15th to file your tax returns, but if you're in that position, those are your options. Yeah, so that's really the October 15th deadline. We're not really talking about how to file the returns, but just the deadlines and the important issues around that October 15th deadline. I'd say the lesson here is if you are in a position where you're filing by October 15th, you probably want to rethink your filing strategies, why you're filing like that, and just make a commitment next year to actually get your returns done in a much more timely fashion. So if you're doing the returns yourself, get more organized, make sure you don't procrastinate on filing some of these forms. Get all the information together, file your FBARs early. If you're using an accountant, that can be tricky sometimes because it depends on the firm. Some firms will push US tax returns into June regardless, and then into October 15th because of capacity issues. So each firm is going to be different. But the one thing you can control is first, when you get the information to your accountant. That's really important. Don't procrastinate on that. And really important, make sure you follow their directions to the T. So if they send you a checklist, complete that checklist as best you can. If they send you an email on exactly what you need to provide, if they give you a list of 20 things, don't give them 15. Or if you're going to give them 15, make sure you track the other 5, because all that's going to happen, you're going to have to go back and forth with that last piece of information that they're missing. And of course, they're there to help. But remember, as they're going back and forth, they're just accumulating time on your file. It's going to get much more expensive unnecessarily. So if you're going to spend the time up front to really help them get the information into them as quickly as possible, that will make your tax season so much smoother. And in my experience, most of our clients got their tax returns done by April 30th of the year. If you can get your information in, most firms can make that happen depending on capacity issues. And that's a great way to kind of end tax season, be done by April 30th. Don't have to worry about it into the June deadline, into the October deadline, to the December deadline. So always important, if you can, file by April 15th. 15th. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions on your cross-border tax filings, your cross-border investment strategies, please reach out. We offer free consultations for those who want to walk through a cross-border tax and financial planning chat about your situation. So I'll leave a link to that below. Once again, thanks everybody for the support for the channel. If you haven't been on the Facebook group yet, please join. We're almost at 10,000 members. If you found this video helpful, it is always a help to the channel to like, share, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel so you can be alerted to any new videos that are posted. Thanks again for everybody's support, and we'll see you on the next one.